Hello and welcome to Winter Grace Senior Ministries. I am Debbie Bergio and I am joined today by a panel of experts. We have a financial advisor, an elder care attorney, and a personal trainer. Ladies and gentlemen, would you go ahead and introduce yourselves, please? Katrina, why don't you go first, please?
Hi, my name is Katrina Wolf. I own a company called AgeWell Senior Fitness. I'm also a senior fitness specialist, a functional aging specialist, and a physical therapy assistant. All of our trainers are physical therapy assistants and certified personal trainers, and we specialize in working with clients over 55 and people with health conditions such as Parkinson's, stroke, arthritis, any type of medical condition. We can work on an exercise program with them.
Great, thanks, Katrina. Rachel, will you please share about you?
Sure. My name is Rachel Vogel. I'm an elder law attorney with Frank & Share. We're in Lutherville, Maryland, and we focus on estate planning, estate administration. We do Medicaid, long-term care planning with asset protection, and we do trusts, special needs trusts, administer trusts.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And John?
Yep, good afternoon. I'm John Dove, and I am with Edward Jones Investments. My office is here in Ellicott City, but I serve really anywhere. We focus on anything. I'm a financial advisor, so basically everything with money when it comes to investments, building wealth, as well as protecting wealth, as well as transferring wealth. So helping with that process of planning out what your retirement might look like or what your future may look like as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. So I know a lot of times people will be coming to you maybe after you would like them to have already come to you earlier. And this seminar is all about planning, making sure we have done everything that we can do to plan best for our retirement, our second half of life, however you would like to refer to it. But who would be your ideal client? When would you like to first meet a client so that you can help them prepare best for retirement and beyond? Anyone want to go first?
Yeah, if I could go first, sure. I think that really, as early as the earlier, the better, obviously. If you're in your 30s, you're probably balancing retirement planning with just everyday living. Maybe you have a family, myself included. I have 2 little girls, and so we're balancing daycare and living expenses and buying new houses and all these different things. And then you also have to think forward in advance to the future of what retirement's going to look like. But obviously, the earlier the better. But you know what? If you're in your 50s and you've been just working and you've been saving and you've been doing what you think is right, that's a great time to meet and sit down together and review your plan, where you still have some time to make some adjustments and make some tweaks if we need to ahead of time before, not that it gets too late, but sometimes you might be less opportunistic to be able to get some opportunities available to you if you wait till you're 65, going to retire, and then you call me and we realize that maybe you should work for another couple of years, or we don't have enough saved for the lifestyle that you want to enjoy.
Excellent. Okay, that makes so much sense. Rachel, I think people think about coming to an elder law attorney when you're thinking about wills and thinking about more toward maybe the end of later in life, but is that when you want to first meet your clients?
I would say same thing as John. When you're in your 30s or younger, it's a really good idea to start getting your estate plan in place. There's a lot of times that people just put it off, and when you are facing an imminent nursing home stay and you're retaining me to carry out an asset protection plan, if you don't have, for example, a power of attorney or an updated power of attorney in place, my hands are tied with what kind of planning I can do. There are things that we can do, but if you have an updated document or a whole set of estate planning documents and you come to me, there's more planning techniques I can use to help protect your money and maximize what I am protecting for you. So, I think really in your 30s or if you get married or buy your first house and have children, you really need to start getting your estate plan in place for sure.
Excellent. Thanks. Katrina, I know you
Well,
talked about focusing on, you have Parkinson's clients and other health related concerns, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, ideally, exercise and fitness should be a lifelong habit that we all make, and that's the most effective way to stay healthy throughout your life. But it's never too late to start exercising. We really focus in on older adults. So I'd love to see people when if they're first starting to notice, maybe they walk a lot and they are active, but they're noticing that they're a little nervous walking across the grass. They're holding on for dear life when they go up the stairs. So their balance is starting to be not as good. I'd like to see them when they start to notice those changes rather than after they've had a fall. Oftentimes I see people much later after they've had some catastrophic diagnosis or event. But if we could intervene earlier when people are first noticing, oh, I'm just not as stable as I used to be. I can't get off the floor like I used to with my grandkids. The interventions are much more effective then when you're addressing it before there is a catastrophic event. That doesn't mean that after a fall you can't improve things greatly, but the sooner the better.
That makes so much sense. I know all three of you in a different way work with folks to help them achieve what their goals are in that later in life. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about a little bit about how that goal setting, maybe it's travel or charity or and how each of you can help people plan for their goals and make those goals reality. Katrina, can you talk to us?
Sure.
I mean, kind of go back to where we just were, but
yeah, John and I talked briefly before the webinar about, when you're planning for your future financially, I think we all have hopes and dreams of traveling, maybe not right now, but this won't last forever, but traveling and seeing the world and spending time with grandchildren. And isn't that where you want to spend your money? You don't want to spend your money on assisted living and medical costs and things like that. So when you're saving all of that money, you also need to not just plan for that financial piece, but are you going to be physically able to do it? I had a lady actually hire me to train her to go on a cruise. She had COPD that happened as a result of a heart surgery, and she was on oxygen, and she wanted to be able to go on the excursions on the cruise, and they were accommodative for disabilities, but she really wanted to be able to participate, and she was able to do that. We worked for several months and got her to the point where getting on and off the bus and taking short walks wasn't not going to be completely taxing for her. So even though maybe she wasn't training when she was 60 to do that, we were able to accomplish that. So she had saved the money, and now she was putting in the investment in her health to be able to enjoy what she wanted to do with that money.
thanks. I'm sure, Rachel, you work with people who have their goals for what they've built up their assets and their goals for what they would like to do with them and preparing ahead.
Right. So by the time people come to me for what I mainly do, the long-term care and asset protection, they're maybe past the traveling point of life. But the main point is, say they come to John or they're working with Katrina beforehand, to have everything in place financially and be physically able to continue living their life to the best of their ability. My goal is to make sure that their life savings is not wiped out by having to pay assisted living or pay a nursing home. Today, nursing homes are I've been seeing a lot of $11,000, $12,000 private pay bills. And so my goal is to make sure that what you've worked so hard for your whole life is protected. And in addition to that, kind of going back to coming to me a little earlier to get your estate plan in place, my goal, again, is to make sure that the court is out of your personal business. So by having your last will and testament prepared, your power of attorney, you're avoiding having a judge make these decisions for you, which may not align with what your wishes actually are.
Makes so much sense. John, I think we've talked before about You talk about making sure we have enough money for assisted living or aging in place, but what are some of the other goals that people come to you with that you help them plan for, and that planning ahead is really important for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that primary goal that everyone probably has is to retire one day, as that being one of the main goals that they have. But I mean, you can come to us and say, hey, one of my goals is to pay down some debt. And we work together to develop a strategy to pay down credit card debt. Or you may come to me and say, hey, I'm planning for a vacation, or I want to plan to have something, charitable giving, aligned with what our goals are. And so we can sit down and review. And sometimes that's a question of, well, what account should we take that from? What advantages do I have from donating from my retirement account versus my traditional taxable account? Well, if you're giving to a nonprofit or a church, you actually might want to take from the retirement account if you're, in the retirement phase, because then you don't pay income tax, because if you donate it directly to a nonprofit organization. So there's advantages to doing different things. I'd like to also just remark with what Katrina was saying is it's so interesting that it's a little bit more of like preventative medicine, right? So you pay a little bit now as preventative medicine to work out or do things, but in the long run, it's really pays off to be healthy. And that it really does coincide with us, especially when it comes to asset protection, or, when you think about life insurance, which life insurance always has that like scary hue to it, but it's what it is. It protects, it's a way to look after the people after you're gone. And if the sooner you get started, when we're talking about ages too, if you can do it earlier when you're healthy, you get things for a lower cost, a lower premium. Everything costs less when you're healthy, rather than waiting until you absolutely need it and you really wish you had done it 25 years ago. Then it's very expensive and it starts to become a challenge. Obviously, I think this all kind of goes together of planning and trying to protect yourself and protect your family more than anything too, once you're gone in that regard.
I did reach out and ask in the world of social media for some questions that folks might have for our lawyer, our financial advisor, our personal trainer, and I did receive some questions. I'd like to throw those out now. And just because they might be focused on one person, I know you all we're coming at this topic from 3 different perspectives, and please chime in. One is, what are some of the reasons people do go to assisted living? And then the second part of that was, how can those be addressed through exercise? But the whole idea of being prepared to make that transition to assisted living really applies to everyone. But some of the reasons people go to assisted living, and that can be addressed through exercise. Obviously, Katrina, that's in your ballpark right now.
Yeah, sure. One of the major reasons people go to assisted living is because they are no longer able to perform their ADLs, meaning activities of daily living, able to care for themselves, make their meals, dress themselves, those types of things. There's research out there showing there's specific hallmarks that research have looked at, like grip strength, balance, the ability to get in and out of a chair. And those can all be addressed through exercise. Gait speed is another one. You can hear my PT background coming in there. So keeping yourself strong. So strength training, not just walking. Lots of people like to walk. They think that's enough, and it's not. The ACSM recommends 2 days a week of strength training and at least 1 day a week, if not 2, of what they call neuromuscular exercise, which is balance training, balance specific training. So doing those things early will help keep you strong to be able to maintain your strength, to be able to stay and take care of yourself. Because when you can't care for yourself, that is one of the big reasons people have to go to assisted living. Another one is dementia, and exercise has been linked to decreased risk of dementia. So that should be a lifelong thing for all of us. But like I said, it's never too late. But exercising can decrease your risk for dementia and help you stay strong enough to care for yourself so that you don't need to go to an assisted living.
Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts about that? I do have another question about a will and someone saying they don't have any money. Why would I need a will if I don't have any money? Obviously, this person hasn't visited and worked with John yet. They would have a retirement portfolio worked out. But Rachel, do you hear that question a lot? I don't have a will.
Yeah.
Why do I mean, I don't have any money. Why would I need a will?
Yes. So to piggyback on what Katrina was saying, that's with the ADLs, that's where I see people needing to go into assisted living. We always try to have them assessed by like a geriatric care manager to see what's appropriate for them. If they're going from the home to a facility, it's a lot harder. Whereas if you had a catastrophic event where you were in the hospital and go to like a rehab, that's a little different. But it's typically when they're having the problems with the ADLs. So unfortunately, there's not a ton I can do when someone's in assisted living. There's not a lot of public benefits to assist. I mainly do the nursing home side of it. And then to your question about the will, I do a lot of presentations, you know, around, I've done one for Winter Grace. I do a lot around Maryland, and people always say, I don't need a will, I don't have anything. And again, first of all, it goes back to not wanting a judge to decide how your things are distributed. There's a lot of times where people think they don't have anything, but there are assets that are considered probate assets where that don't have a joint owner or a beneficiary, that have to be passed, you know, the title has to be passed to the beneficiary under the will through the probate process. So there's a lot of little things like cars or a house, that's not a little thing, but a house, or just even like, say you have a checking account with $2,000 and you don't have a beneficiary or a joint owner, it's a real pain to have to probate that, you know, for just, you would eat up the $2,000 just by having to pass the title to that. So I always think it's a really good idea to have a will so that there's a catch-all and a safety net for things that you might not think would be part of your probate estate.
Let's see. So I think of financial advisors and elder attorneys working together. Is there a process that you go through, like in a kind of like a partnership, that how you two work together?
Yeah, definitely. I think when we sit down with clients, that's one of the questions we ask is, first of all, who's your CPA from a tax position, but also, do you have everything in order? And do you have an estate attorney that you work with? Do you have a will? Do you have a trust if that's necessary? Do you have everything in place? Because it's protecting those assets and protecting yourself and protecting your family members too, you know. And that's, I think, a big part that we haven't really touched on is when you think about, you know, you may have a spouse and your spouse, say your spouse all of a sudden has a form of dementia and you're all of a sudden the caretaker for them. And that puts it becomes a burden sometimes, and it's unfortunate and it's tough. But if you haven't taken appropriate planning measures, you don't have any way to facilitate that. Whereas people can come in, and that's where the assisted living comes in, is to assist with living. I mean, that's the bottom line. And sometimes being able to relieve that burden from a spouse or a daughter, son, or a grandson or granddaughter, whatever it might be. You know, because all those people will step up to take care of you, but you're better off having something planned out. So yes, to answer the question, absolutely. That's one of the first things is we want to be able to work with the other professionals and be a team. We want to be your team and help you get whatever it is that you want to have accomplished.
And to add to what John's saying, oftentimes in what I see when a family member is a caretaker, they often become a lot more ill or will even die before the person that they're caring for. It's really scary. And it is a burden. That word's not the best word, but that's what it is. It's a burden on your family. So, and then I work with financial advisors a lot when I'm doing my asset protection. A lot of times people have IRAs or brokerage or like various retirement accounts. And a lot of times in my spousal cases, the planning I do is a Medicaid compliant annuity. It's a single premium immediate annuity. And specifically with IRAs, I like to work with the financial person to roll over the IRA, if it's in the well spouse's name, to a Medicaid compliant annuity so that we're able to protect that without getting the tax consequences of cashing it out and then using the after-tax money to fund the annuity.
Rachel, I know that's always very confusing, but
Was that confusing? I'm sorry.
It's just even I always still am like, huh? But I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people, it's one of those things that Rachel can help explain when that situation comes up, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect your assets so that you can take advantage of the state programs essentially. And instead of having all these assets depleted, you're able to put it into a income product,
Exactly.
which is what an annuity is. And so now it's income for the other spouse.
And it takes away the cash value. It
And
takes away the cash and turns it into an income stream.
Exactly. Rachel knows what she's talking about. So if you have questions, reach out to her to help explain and facilitate that. And
This is why you hire the professionals. And
Exactly. It's exactly right. You need a
Yeah.
team.
And I will say that I worked in home health as a physical therapy assistant for 16 years. And I would go into the home oftentimes where people were making these decisions and not having any clue what to do with mom. What is she eligible for assisted living? How are we going to pay for it? We have nothing. Is she eligible for a nursing home? But where's dad going to live? Because are they going to want to take the house? And really the whole theme of this is to take care of this before your daughter is trying to step in and you're 85 years old and wondering, am I going to have a home to live in, or is a nursing home going to take it? And I've seen this happen multiple times, spending as much time as I did in home care, where a catastrophic event happens. So I can say, for your own peace of mind and for your family's peace of mind, just to make things very easy, that if you take the time to take care of it ahead of time, it really saves people a lot of heartache and headache in the end.
Mhm.
Words of experience and wisdom there for sure. Rachel, I know that you have, we've talked before about a group of documents that everyone should have. I was wondering if you could go into that. I mean, I know that could be an hour in itself, but in a
Yeah.
nutshell kind of thing.
It's one of the things like you should have in place before your daughter steps in and they're like, what is going on? So I always recommend having 4 documents: a last will and testament, a power of attorney for financial reasons, an advance medical directive where you're naming a healthcare agent to speak on your behalf with doctors and medical staff if you're unable to speak. I mean, if you're unable to communicate, you can, shake your head or squeeze their hand or whatever. But if you're totally out of it, you're appointing someone to act for you. And then a living will. So the advance directive and living will, they work together. The advance directive actually names the agents, and then your wishes, like, do you want to be kept alive artificially if you're in a vegetative state, etc. The living will discusses your wishes with regards to those different scenarios, but it does not name health agents. So that would be used by a physician or a doc. If they could not locate your healthcare agents, they would still have something guiding them on what your wishes are.
Great. Katrina, along the same lines, so when you're planning for physical fitness and well-being as you age, what would you say are your top 3 things that you would want people to focus on? Or
Well,
4,
I mean,
whatever.
we have guidelines for the American College of Sports Medicine on what they recommend. So the American College of Sports Medicine recommends 150 minutes a week of cardiovascular exercise at a moderate level. So that would be 30 minutes, 5 days a week, 2 days of strength training, and then 2 days of balance training. Now, I'm going to say a word about strength training. Strength training is the thing that people tend to not do. They're intimidated by weights, or they don't do it well. They have their 2-pound pink weights and they lift them 50 times and they think they're building strength, and you're not. You should be doing 8 to 12 repetitions, 2 sets, and the last several repetitions should be difficult. So if you're not struggling those last 2 repetitions to do them correctly, you need to progress. So strength training should be progressive. You should always be increasing your repetitions or your weight. And so if you're taking a class, the senior centers often offer classes. Make sure that you're challenging yourself, because if you're not challenging yourself and you're just going through the motions, you're not progressing yourself and improving your strength. You might be maintaining it, but you're not going to be progressing and making yourself better and building that muscle. So, and then of course the balance training is so important. 1 out of 4 people over 65 will have a fall every year. That's huge. And falls in people over 70 can be indicative of death after that. So working on your balance early when you're in your 50s and 60s, but it's never too late. Even if you're somebody's using a walker, if you're thinking about your mom walking with a walker, you know, your balance can be improved, but it has to be something that you work on continually.
And one more thing, what about flexibility?
That's also important. By the time we're 50, we all have some sort of rotator cuff pathology and we're doing this instead of this. So stretching and flexibility is important for posture. We get hunched over, this all gets tight, this all gets weak. So a good stretching program to keep your range of motion so that those ADLs are easier.
Hey, Katrina, how about weight loss? I'm sure weight loss is something that you assist with a lot.
Yeah, well, I focus more on function. Weight loss is important if you're overweight. I don't have a background in nutrition, so I am a proponent of people giving advice on things that they're educated in, and I know the basics. When it comes to weight loss, it's very easy. Calories in, calories out. If you eat more calories than you expend, you're going to gain weight. If you eat less calories than you expend, you're going to lose weight. So it's really that simple. But it gets complicated when you get older because you can be taking medications where the foods that you eat that can interfere with your medications. If you're on warfarin, a blood thinner, you can't have leafy green vegetables. If you're on a cardiovascular diet, there's certain things you should avoid and certain things you should eat. And then if you're diabetic, of course, that's a whole nother ball game. So especially when you get into the age group that I serve, I often recommend people see a dietitian or a nutritionist. But the cardiovascular exercise helps with the calorie burning to create that caloric deficit, and the strength training helps to build muscle, which will, when you're sedentary, which will burn more calories at rest than, you know, fat tissue will. So those are all strategies, but it gets a little complicated when you get older. And actually, when people get into their 70s, they kind of start to lose weight. Us poor women, we get to be about 40 and we gain. And then when you hit to be about 70, 75, sometimes we start to lose weight. So I oftentimes am making people something to eat before I leave their house because they're not eating enough. And you have to have proper nutrition in order to build muscle. So it's really, weight loss is absolutely important in the planning stage because that can contribute to heart disease and other diagnoses like diabetes. But then when you get into the later years, proper nutrition is really important so that people stay healthy and functional and don't lose too much weight.
So it's
You're
almost
maintaining.
Yeah, sorry. It's almost like you need a team too. So saying that you have a team of personal trainer and either nutritionist or else research yourself, or
Sure.
Probably better to have a team.
So John, you help people bring their financial life together. I know Rachel talked about specific documents, but do you have an overall plan that you pretty much go through people and they have something to hold on to? And
Yeah, exactly. We end up basically giving a financial plan, and it's very simple when you think about it. It's basically, where are you today? Where would you like to be? Can we get to where you want to be? And if so, how do we get there? And then keeping you on track. And what we do is we basically take inventory. So we'll take inventory of your assets, of your liabilities, and then we'll take inventory of what your spending is, as well as what your savings are. And then from there, you're basically kind of tracking out, okay, this is what I'm spending, this is what's going out, this is what's coming in, this is what I'm earning, and then this is the amount of money that I'm putting away, that I'm saving. for retirement, or I'm saving for whatever goal it may be. And then you can project out and say, okay, if I continue to do that for the next 25 years, using my risk tolerance and understanding how I feel about investments, where would I be? And what does that retirement plan look like? And then once you are actually retiring, we have these different sources of income, right? So we have Social Security, maybe we have a pension. You know, a lot of places don't have pensions anymore, but maybe you have a pension from a job or whatever it may be, as well as you have your investments, your 401k or your whatever may be. And then we strategize to help you say, okay, what should we take from to live off of if we need something, or maybe we need to adjust our spending so that it fits. But long and the short of your question is, yes, we end up actually giving you a document that you can leave with. And I mean, we actually do complimentary consultations. So if you have a question, you can give me a call and I'm happy to go through this with you. And it's important to find the right fit too. So sometimes it's a matter of sitting down, find out if we're a good fit, have a conversation. If we're not, you know, we can refer out and find you somebody else that might be a better fit.
So I know with Katrina's area, we have a plan. We don't want to store that plan away and put it in safekeeping. We want to get it into action. But for John and Rachel, is the best place to keep these plans and documents in a safe deposit box?
So yeah, a lot of my clients keep things there, and the problem is they never can find the key. So when their daughter or son gets involved, no one knows how to get into the thing, and they can't prove that their power of attorney and have authority to get into the box because it's in the box. So I always tell people to just keep things in a fireproof safe in their house. That's the best thing.
And we recently my husband and I just recently visited my mother-in-law, and she gave us a tour of her fireproof box and where all the important things are. And we've been talking about, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And we finally, went over there. It's just when we were over there, we just don't think about it. And so that was really good to know, where we know, now we know, so we don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say for my plan, mine's more, it changes. People change jobs, people change things, life changes. Unfortunately, divorces and things happen too. So I'd say mine is a little bit more like a living document. And so when we do reviews, you want to do an annual review and update things. Maybe you've paid down a debt or you have more spending available, whatever it might be. Then it's just keeping on tweaking things and keep on changing things as it goes on.
I have a few other questions, but I was wondering, are there questions that what would you all like to talk about or ask of each other?
I have a question.
Talking.
Rachel, what is on average, what does it cost to get your affairs in order, as far as like the 4 documents you talked about and basic estate planning, say for the average person? I know it depends on the type of assets people have, but I know sometimes people think they can't afford a lawyer.
Right. So we just updated our fee schedule. So it's around $800 flat fee for an individual. I think we just bumped it up to $850 because we're doing a little extra work these days with the Skype signings. The governor's allowed us to do signings and notarizations through Skype, and it just involves a little more paperwork and sending things here and there. But for an individual, it's a flat fee of $850, and that includes the 1 hour or 1 hour and a half initial consultation. It includes us drafting the documents, sending them to the client, any phone calls or emails that are involved with questions or revisions. And then it includes us finalizing the documents and arranging for the appointment to have them signed. So you get a lot of bang for your buck there. For a married couple, we're charging, I believe, $1,050 now. It was $1,000, but again, we've bumped it up because of the pandemic. So I think that's really reasonable. If you have to add a trust, or you want a trust in your will for your children, that can bump it up a little bit. Maybe, it really depends on what we're doing. I kind of you know, I have a number I work around, but it depends on exactly what someone wants. Maybe if you wanted a will with a minor's trust, it would bump up the total fee to $2,000 or $2,500. And a lot of times, speaking of trust, there's a lot of times where people come in with trust because before they've seen me, they've seen, like, we call them trust mill attorneys that kind of shove trust down people's throats, and we usually end up revoking them. They're not necessary. There's the main reason you would want to trust is if you have a disabled child and you want to plan for them, if you were to pass away before them, if you have property in multiple states, or if you wanted to, you know, put something in your will to account for minor children, if God forbid you passed away before they reached, you know, the age of being an adult. So trusts are more expensive, but a lot of times they are not really necessary in estate planning. And
Well, I think you touched on something that a lot of people don't realize. You could probably do a whole nother video on this, is that a lot of older adults are caring for disabled children.
yeah.
Disabled children are living longer. I have a son with autism, so I'm listening very intently to what you're saying. You know, he's 16 and we have to think about this planning. But there's a lot of people in their 70s and 80s that are taking care of middle-aged disabled children. And so the financial planning and the estate planning are really important for them, as well as staying healthy, because I know I think I could never die. I have to live forever. But
It's important to think of things like that. I mean, it's what would happen if you pass before them and what you need to have in place. So
sure, and with the medical advances that they're making with like cerebral palsy and brain injuries and things like that, there are more and more older parents caring for children, disabled children.
mm-hmm. And also, just to add, if you do have a disabled child, that's an additional planning technique we can actually use in our asset protection, because Medicaid actually allows you to gift assets, your house, your car, whatever, to your disabled child and not have a penalty applied to that gifting. So that's something to keep in mind too, that's just an added, buffer from Medicaid, penalizing you for gifting to someone.
I'd share also, Rachel, that if you say you are in one of those situations where you are caring for somebody and you're thinking, okay, what happens when I pass? How is everything going to be handled? There's trust companies. So a lot of times you might say, hey, my nephew or my niece is going to handle that, and they're going to take care of, giving my son or daughter a certain amount of money every month or whatever it might be. But sometimes it can create tensions and family elements and things, and you're like, I'm putting this responsibility on an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, there's actually companies. So like, for instance, Edward Jones has a company. It's an Edward Jones Trust Company. Mm-hmm. And what they do is basically they execute the trust that Rachel has put together for you. And so they're able to say, okay, let's take care of selling these properties and let's invest that money. And then let's give this money on a monthly basis to this child or this grandchild, or let's distribute it the way it's supposed to be done. Mm-hmm. And I like that because it takes a lot of that emotional stuff out of it. And that's something that you don't want to have a lot of that emotional stuff involved with. And then it seems to me like it's a pretty good decision to use for that. But I appreciate too, Rachel, what you say is not everything needs to be in a trust, and if you have just investment accounts, and you don't have one of these interesting situations, you could very well, there's a reason there's a beneficiary added to accounts. And that's one of the things we do with reviews too is, hey, is this the right beneficiary? Because they have the TOD, which is transfer on death beneficiary. It goes right to the person that it needs to do, and it doesn't have to go through probate. It doesn't have to go through all that process. But it's great being able to have Rachel as a resource to ask about those things.
Yeah, to add on to what you're saying, I agree with the trust company. We refer out to those sometimes because sometimes it helps to have a neutral third party that has no emotion attached to, what they're doing. Because the trustee is, approving or denying disbursement requests from the trust. And it can get a little, say that you get mad at your nephew and you're like, I'm not going to give your disbursement this month, which is not right. We would do something about that. But it is nice to have a neutral third party.
Mm.
And another thing is, when I first started doing elder law in 2008, before law school, I just wanted to be in an elder law firm. So I was a secretary just to get a job. And we had a lot of revocable living trusts, but that was because the federal tax and the Maryland tax exemptions were lower at that time. I think they're both around 5 million now, like both of them. So we don't need those spousal bypass trust or for tax purposes, unless the exemptions go back down again. So that's just something to point out. I think that's why a lot of my older clients come to me with these trusts, because they're older from years ago.
Right. So y'all have any other questions for each other?
Rachel, I'll ask a question from you too, about I've heard that trusts are the tax wise, it's more expensive when assets are in trust. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that entails and like how that income is structured?
Right.
Put you on the spot a little bit, right?
Yeah. So I do more to be honest, I do primarily special needs trusts for people when they're doing Medicaid planning. My colleague Stacy would be a little more knowledgeable on the tax side of it. She does a lot of estate administration, where you're seeing that stuff play out, or if you have a trust while you're living, maybe if you're involved with like the CPA, you have a little more info on that. So I can't really touch on that where I would feel comfortable like saying something about that. But that is true. You have to file a separate tax return for the trust. If it's passing to someone other than like an immediate family member, there can be, like inheritance or estate tax. People think it avoids a lot of things, and it doesn't. Especially, they think that if your money's in a trust, it's protected from Medicaid, and that's false as well. But I can certainly get a follow-up answer to that. I apologize that I can't elaborate too much.
I told you I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay. No, it's fine.
I've heard other things too. I've heard that people get these trusts set up and they're all psyched about it, but then they never put the money into the trust.
Right.
And same with property. So if you own property in a Delaware state or somewhere and you never have it titled over to the trust,
then it's not.
It doesn't solve a
problem.
I see a ton of trusts that aren't funded. They never take the extra step to retitle things, and it's like an empty, barren trust, and it does nothing. So
exactly,
for like nothing. But I see that a lot. You have to take that extra step after signing it.
And if I could ask another question of Katrina, just out of curiosity, like when somebody comes and sits down with you or says, hey, I want to come up with a plan and I want to get fit or whatever it might be, or I want to be able to go on these vacations or whatever I want to do. What's kind of your process like? Do you evaluate them to kind of see where they are and then build a plan, or how does that go?
Sure. First, I discuss with them like what their medical history is. The older you get, the more diagnoses we have. So I discuss with them what their medical history is, what their exercise history is, any surgeries, that type of thing. If need be, I get a medical release from their doctor to exercise. In my business, we see a lot of people with medical issues, COPD, Parkinson's, stroke, that type of thing, because we really specialize in that. So we absolutely touch base with their doctor. If they're in therapy or if they've had therapy recently, we try to contact their physical therapist to see where they left off and any advice the therapist has for what they see as a need for the client. We do a fitness assessment with the client, testing upper and lower body strength and their balance. And then, of course, exercise is most meaningful when you're working towards a meaningful goal for the person. So find out what their meaningful goal is. Losing 10 pounds isn't a meaningful goal to me. Being able to get on the floor and play with your grandkids and able to get off the floor without needing help, that's a meaningful goal. Being able to go on excursions on a cruise is a meaningful goal. So I try to encourage my clients to figure out exactly specifically what they want to do so we can work towards that specific thing. If they are looking to lose weight, then I encourage them to seek out a nutritionist or a dietitian, especially if they have other diabetes, heart disease, those types of things. If they just don't have any medical, problems as far as diet goes, Weight Watchers is a great program. I'm not a fan of fad diets. Eat good food. We know what's good for us and what's not good for us. There's so much diet advice out there, but at the end of the day, we all know what we should be eating. It's just oftentimes we're eating a little too much, even if it's the good stuff. So I really try to plan out with the client what they're trying to accomplish. And a lot of times, I had a client who was falling every week, 2 or 3 times a week, and she'd had physical therapy, and her goal was to fall less than once a month, and we did get to that point. So the goal has to be meaningful to the person, and with the clientele that I see, it's not. Frankly, if you want to lose 10 pounds of baby weight, I'm not your girl, But if you want to be able to go down your stairs and without holding onto the rail, or be able to walk to the mailbox when you can't, then those are my people.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Rachel, Katrina, John, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this discussion and also being a part of our resource fair. Each of them, everyone can find them on our resource fair, and I'll have the links with contact information below this video on the website. But just thank you so much for sharing your expertise and how you all can work together and complement each other for this looking at the whole person. And it's just so important. I just thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Have a great day.
Thinking
Thank
of
you.